What happens when you take the concepts of Harry Potter, X-Men, and your typical Sherlock Holmes mystery novel and combine it into one cohesive concept? Apparently the next book that Hollywood can adapt. Duh. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. For me personally, this is just one of those rare instances where I'm just minding my own business and just strolling through the newest released literature in the bookstore, and I come across something that just catches my eye. I know we always tell each other you can never judge a book by its cover, but for me, I must honestly say that when it comes to reading at all, I have to have some type of tactile type of connection that goes beyond physical explanations whenever I'm trying to deal with a book. For Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the cover instantly draws you in and automatically gains your curiosity. The cover is odd and mysterious, depicting a girl who almost seems like her face in and of itself could belong to a much older lady who is just floating nonchalantly above the ground. By first appearances, it's almost like it could be a historical novel, a collection of ghost stories, if you will. Although the appearance of the book and the synopsis from what I got on the back intrigued me enough, what honestly hooked me to this novel was the quote that was also on the back by another author by the name of John Green. If any of you all don't know who John Green is, he is the author of Fault in Our Stars. But I knew John Green from when him and his brother Hank Green were doing their YouTube videos, and they still do YouTube videos, but when they were doing the Vlogbrothers, and since then I got, by virtue of me watching Vlogbrothers, I got interested in SciShow, which is hosted by Hank Green and a few other people. And that alone just somehow appealed to me. I'm like, here's a book with a good recommendation by a well-respected author and just person within social media, so therefore it must be a good read. Let me first start by doing a small backstory on this book. The author Ransom Riggs, from what I gather, was when he was gathering research for this book, over time, throughout the course of, as he was trying to plan for this book, he collected a series of photographs, old still photos from the past, none of which I can sure were actually ever dated. As he started to collect dozens and dozens of these still photos, he came up with the idea to somehow incorporate them into a novel. The photographs, for lack of a better word, are extremely odd and peculiar. None of them went through post-processing. Virtually none of them I can think of, except for a couple, had any kind of effects done to them. As stated verbatim in the book, all of the pictures in it are authentic, vintage found photographs, with the exception of a few that have undergone minimal post-processing. They were lent from the personal archives of up to 10 collectors, people who have spent years and countless hours hunting through the giant bins of assorted snapshots at flea markets and antiques malls. So the concept of this book alone is extremely fascinating. You're essentially creating an entire narrative based around photos. But does it succeed is the question. So how does the novel start off? Our main character is Jacob Wells, who is 16. Early on in the book, it's established that he has a close connection to his grandfather, who throughout most of Jacob's childhood told him these big tall tales and nighttime stories that were very fantastical in nature. His grandfather, till the day he died, swore up and down that the majority of these stories were true, much to the chagrin of the rest of the rest of Jacob's family. Unfortunately, tragedy sets in once his grandfather is mysteriously murdered one day. Through the permission of his parents, Jacob's father decides to guide him to an island off the coast of Wales in England. The only reason this even happened is because upon Jacob's grandfather's death, he has to go and see a counselor, and his counselor decides that in order for him to grieve properly, he needs to go to the place where his grandfather went missing so he can come to terms with the loss of his grandfather. When hearing about this, that's only when his parents decide to let him go to this island. But obviously Jacob has other ideas in store, where he decides to do his own investigation to figure out what happened to his grandfather. Now, as far as spoilers, that's about all I can say for this novel. The one major issue with this book is that it tries to almost establish itself as one type of genre and ultimately goes through like 3 different stages of different genres as the story progresses. The very nature of how the book is structured, by lieu of the photographs, make it come across as meant to be like horror or creepy or mysterious. This type of mood always kind of stays consistent throughout the novel, but as you'll read on in the book, it takes a dramatic turn towards the end. But I can only attribute this to the fact that the book has a forced type of pacing to it. You're trying to create a narrative around a set of pictures. If the pictures paint a type of story that don't exactly gel with what you had in mind, you may be compelled to take it a whole different direction. You can sense that Ransom was trying to make it all cohesive as he was writing it. And for the most part, he did a solid job. But what may ultimately turn readers off from this book is what I said earlier, is that you pick it up expecting one thing and you get something else entirely towards the end. However, if you're the kind of person who picks up a book and you just take it along for the ride, there's a lot of potential this story has that will pique your interest and make you want to continue reading the series. The world in and of itself is something on par of what you may see in a Harry Potter universe. And by me explaining this, you can gather there's a bunch of fantasy elements in this book. If you're surprised by me saying this, well, you're in the same boat that I was when I started reading too. This dramatic turn is off-putting, some may say even unsettling. And the twist at the end is almost anticlimactic. The book also somewhat starts off slowly. Nothing much happens within the first 50 to 60 pages of the novel. Once it finally does happen, the reader is filled in with a bunch of exposition within the amount of like 10 pages. An entire world and subculture of people and characters and lore is established really quick. And it's almost a bit jarring in a sense, because as I felt like I was reading, it happened so quick that once I continued on for like another 10 to 15 pages, I almost kind of forgot what they explained earlier. And it only feels strange because the book feels within the first 50 to 60 pages that it's almost like an adult novel. But then it quickly turns into like almost a kid's book in the middle. It almost felt like when Ransom was writing it, he was doing the outline as he was going along. He had the pictures gathered. Some of them didn't even make the cut into the book. He could only sell for like maybe half of them at the time. And they're all, I guess he may have situated them on a wall or something, and then he wrote down various plot points he wanted to cover as he got to them. So you'll have a situation where you start a chapter off with one picture to kind of show you what the scenery looks like, and by the end it's changed in 6 different ways. By the end of the chapter, not the book, by the end of the chapter. But holistically beyond that, it's a solid piece of work. The writing is pretty solid, the characters are very well established in my opinion. There is a looming threat that must be taken care of, so there is an end objective. I just can only forewarn readers who decide to take on this book that don't be turned off if you go in with a certain type of expectation but you get something else entirely in the end. Upon completing the book and having looked at other reviews and other written reviews online, I've noticed that the book reviews are somewhat rather mixed, and it's only because of this one aspect of the novel where it changes and the directions and attitudes and moods and themes that it's trying to do from page 1 to the end. But the one reason to me that this book stood out is that it feels timeless in a sense. There's a lot of historical aspects to this book. The pictures are indeed vintage, so you feel like you've kind of jumped into a time capsule and went back to the 1940s. The way people acted, their mannerisms, the feelings, the vibes of the environments that you come across, it feels real and tangible. I overall give Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children a solid 8 out of 10. Very good with its concept and ideas, but only really suffers from its general pacing problems, but only because the pacing problems are forced upon it by what it's trying to base the narrative off of, which is the photos. I also might like to add, in case anyone was wondering, that yes, they are going to try and to adapt this book into a movie. As far as I know, the director will be Tim Burton, which I think is quite appropriate for what kind of book this is. The book itself does feel very Tim Burton-esque, very gothic, very dark, very whimsical, and a little with a hint of creepiness. Anyway, that's my review for Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I recommend it as a very nice, smooth little read. It's enticing, it's engrossing. It's a little bit off-putting sometimes because of the pacing. I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but it's a very solid read and hopefully can turn into a very unforgettable, timeless series, as it already has planned to do, as it seems. So, in the meantime, stay tuned for more reviews. Thank you.